good afternoon, and welcome to our session on addressing the talent gap in semiconductor. I have here with me two of panelists. My name is Christy Simons. I am a partner at Deloitte. I've spent about the last 30 years serving semiconductor clients, so it's obviously an industry that is near and dear to my heart. And it's common knowledge that we've seen a lot of changes in the semiconductor industry, and obviously I think if you're paying attention to the news, you see a lot of the new capacity that is being built, the foundries around the world, the US CHIPS Act, there's a European Act that's really investing in the industry. And so what comes with that is obviously a lot of talent challenges, because with all of the new capacity that's being built, there's going to be a huge demand for talent. So I have with me Karen Weiss, who is a colleague at Deloitte, very focused on our human capital practice, and in particular semiconductor, and co-authored a point of view on the talent shortage in semiconductor. And then Stephanie Crook, who is the Vice President of Organizational and Talent Capabilities at Intel. So we have a lot of information to provide on addressing some of the talent gaps. And maybe to get started, Karen, I would like for you to just maybe share with us a little bit about what the challenges are and the opportunities are when we think about talent for semiconductors.
Well, I think you started alluding to a number of them, right, Christy? Mm-hmm. I think we're in a moment where the demand for talent that's going to be needed to, frankly, not just build the products and fill the factories, but also to build the factories themselves, build the sites.
Construction
workers, et cetera, is far outstripping the supply of available people to do the work. And if you look at the projections of that gap, we would estimate it's anywhere from 70 to 90,000, workers who are going to be needed. 700 to 900,000 workers who would be needed for those semiconductor plants. And so if you think about the challenge and the gap in that supply demand, several things I think are contributing to that. One, if you look at where students are typically going with their degrees at this point, and the under-enrollment in programs that equip people to work in the semiconductor industry relative to other tech industries and other large branded companies, and where people have gravitated, that's been a contributor for sure. A lot of the talent that is equipped to work in the semiconductor space has been either resides overseas or comes from is resident in countries where there presents immigration challenges to bring them to the US, and that continues to be a gap. And then frankly, just the university programs themselves, and the fact that historically many organizations have pulled workers from large four-year universities, and community colleges haven't always been at the table, and that's something that's changing now, but is requiring a catch-up. And so in the near term, you have the challenge of being able to build the new greenfield sites and staff them at a pace when the talent has not caught up.
From an education perspective,
exactly.
Right? That STEM capabilities. Yes. So Stephanie, the great work that you do in Intel, how is Intel? Intel's all over the news as well with, building new fabs, not only here in the US, but globally. How are you addressing the talent gap and the needs for Intel?
So, there's a lot of things that we're doing. We can't go at it alone. Clearly, there's things that we can do inside house, but it has to be a partnership with government, with universities, because there's not enough talent currently, like Karen was sharing.
Right.
So we have to cultivate talent, and we have to find ways to sort of drive the build of that pipeline early on and get people excited about STEM. Intel is looking at how to partner in the places where we know we're going to have big capacity build out, like in Ohio. So we've already committed $150 million with the university systems inside of labs and scholarships. We're working with the National Science Foundation to invest in STEM-related education. we just know that it's not going to be enough, as Karen shared, and also we have to think about the skill development differently. And then inside of our company, we have to be investing in the tools and the AI technology to be able to really do the analysis around supply and demand, because there's such a complexity in terms of the capacity build out and where we're having to build simultaneous locations to ramp in talent.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, Karen, I mentioned, the point of view that Deloitte published that you co-authored. What are some of the key elements that we recommend companies and the industry to focus on to help with this talent development and skill set?
I mean, it won't surprise you. It's really, one thing will not solve it across the board, right? So there's multiple strategies here, and it really starts with looking at the workforce itself, and can we think differently about not just where we get the workers from, but who those workers are, right? Do they need to, I mentioned the notion of a 4-year degree relative to a different type of education. Can we source from other industries, other manufacturing industries, where they bring experience that we may not have traditionally thought of for semiconductor? So thinking differently about the workforce itself is definitely one part of it. And then re-architecting the work, right? So how can AI, how can other types of technologies change the nature of the work itself? And there's certainly strategies there, as well as thinking about the workplace and how do you make that a more engaging place to be. But sort of within that framework, I think there's a couple things to think about. Recently, the Biden administration just announced investments in what they're calling workforce hubs. And these are 5 states around the US where they are seeing investment from large organizations like Intel in that local economy or in that state's economy. So, and that can be anything from, again, semiconductor to broader manufacturing or technology. But Ohio and Arizona, which are 2 places where Intel is particularly active and has growth aspirations, but on to other states as well, where they're doubling down, working with corporations to build local infrastructure, to create those community college programs, and then frankly to draw more people in through branding, because I think that's another big part of this. One of the great examples we're seeing another semiconductor organization employ is really thinking heavily about the branding around their jobs, appealing in a different way through different channels, through social media, through other types of advertising campaigns, to draw people in a way that they wouldn't have traditionally found. So I think it's a mix of investment at the government and corporate level, but it's also being much more innovative in how we think about attracting people to this workforce that may not have traditionally thought about it.
Yeah, and you think about, part of that is culture.
It is.
Too, right? And you think about, how do you attract that talent and the generations, right? The generations and what are they looking at? How are they looking for jobs? What do they want in an employer? I think all of that is changing from a traditional way. Intel has focused a little bit on that as well, right? From a culture perspective and how you hire and you think about the talent that you need. Can you share a little bit about that, Stephanie?
Yeah, so, Intel was founded by 3 founders that really believed that innovation is the blood of technology. And in order to have the outcome that they needed, they really sort of said, hey, everybody needs to own their own employability, which means that you have to have continuous learning experiences and opportunities. And so the company itself needs to be able to provide that, right? And have the kind of policies, practices, infrastructure to move talent, to have internal mobility, to have the flow of talent happen organically, but then also to support employees to be able to move around. And so as we do, for example, site startups, we literally have teams that go and help side-by-side train and do 2-way moves and be able to also move through different types of careers. So it's not uncommon that at Intel you might have 4 different careers because there's just a plethora of learning experiences. But I think that it's going to be ever more important as it becomes, difficult to be able to attain skills, to be able to buy the skills in the market, for people to be able to grow them really fast and exponentially fast. And we know that the best way is through learning of experiences. And so, we've created policies where, people can move within 12 months as long as they're in good standing. We're not going to stop people to be able to have like their own flow. We have built a job architecture and an infrastructure at Intel where people can be able to have literally AI match them with the skills that they've imported, that they have, to the jobs that are open, and allow people to go after the kind of roles that are important for their growth and development. And then in the meantime, it's also really clear we've put all of that together in one location called a career compass, where they can easily navigate the career pathing. And so we make it sort of easier for them to have their data in a common platform, so we can also do better workforce planning. So we know what our internal supply is, while at the same time looking at the external supply and trying to be able to do some scenario planning associated with the growth plans that we have as a company.
So the tools and the development.
I was just going to build on that for a moment, because I think what Stephanie's describing is so important as a leading practice. The organizations that are doing this really well cannot just be relying on bringing people in from the outside. You can't possibly close the gap fast enough by going outside for all of your talent. And so having a culture and programming that develops people internally, but also encourages them to move around to gain experience, is critical, right? So old ways of, I've got a great talent and I'm going to hold on to them.
Yeah.
That it's not good for the person, but it's really not good for the company, because in the end, they need people to build those experiences by moving fluidly through the organization in both an autonomous way, but also with some structure to help them gain skills that you need, right?
Yeah, because the semiconductor has so many specialized capabilities and skills. So even we have something called a sabbatical. Every 7 years, employees get 8 weeks off. And we did it really for a retention tool, because we knew that, talent sort of got that itch after 5 years.
There's a lot of research behind that.
Yeah,
yes.
and so we knew, well, if they had a sabbatical dangling in the fray, they would likely stay. And guess what they do, right? They stay. And, employees will sort of mark their milestones and how many sabbaticals they've had at Intel. But what the knockoff effect is that every time someone leaves, it gives an opportunity to develop, right, in a safe way for 8 weeks into a new role. But you're not on your own. You got people around you. So there's a lot of different capabilities that you end up building through those kind of programs. And I feel like, the semiconductor industry is got so many different capabilities, skills, and facets to it. You have to almost kind of create those mechanisms for employees to go create their own desire to build, right? Yeah. Their unique skills.
One of the other benefits, I think, of that sabbatical program, too, in addition to it lets people cover or kind of try out a role, is it creates natural transition points for leaders. So you have a way to sort of help people move into their next role who might otherwise become a blocker. And I think that also, again, I think it's a way of building structure around the notion of we value movement and we value lateral movement as a way to progress your career. It doesn't all have to be up. So I think
it's going to be really key, right? Retaining the talent that you have, and it sounds like some of these programs are going to be very valuable, and also retraining them to what the new skill set's going to be. I think in 2021, 2 million employees globally were in the semiconductor industry, and now there's going to need to be another million by 2030. Yeah, that's 7 years away. That's a lot of people, right? So really some great programs there.
Yeah, and I joke, Christine, that products don't make themselves.
Right.
So if we have a problem with the supply of talent, everybody's going to have a problem with getting their products to market. And I think that's why our CEO, Pat, has been so intense on ensuring that there's a flexible supply chain across the globe, that doesn't become a major risk, to be able to have access to semi. And then, the talent itself, we know that that's where it starts. And so we have to go way further down the pipeline, and then also find sort of adjacent industries and
Right.
capabilities inside of those, and help the university system, marry up their programs in a way that, ensures that we're going to have that supply of talent when we need those, that talent to be ready to roll.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think part of what we're also back to kind of how did we get here into this crunch, part of this was the productivity gains that were achieved by offshoring so much of particularly, assembly test, but also, production created, then when we hit supply chain challenges, we found ourselves in a situation where we can't supply the world, to your point. And so I think that's part of the drive to bring it back onshore, but also the recognition that manufacturing is core to the US economy. And I think that represents a lot of the need to ensure that we're not over leveraged in one part of the world, and you see investment happening to really globalize the whole space.
Yeah.
Well, I think it gives a little bit more, second sourcing, right, as well. It's not like any one country is really trying to be self-sufficient in everything related to semiconductor, right? It's just the supply chains are moving around globally, and the war for talent is going to be a global challenge. And I think the mobility of people is going to continue as well. As you mentioned, not only hiring new employees, but borrowing from other industries, and then maybe even also, developing new skills with the talent that you have. I'm curious, there's AI is all the rage, right? We hear something about AI every single day, and when we, there's news out there that says, oh, AI is going to steal jobs. But yet in semiconductor, we have this war for talent, and we can foresee it, we can predict it. We are trying to work with companies, and Intel and others are really thinking, what is that workforce going to look like, right? The work of the future. And so you mentioned AI briefly, Stephanie, and what do you think about, AI and the human element, right? It can be additive as opposed to be subtractive.
So what we're seeing is, of course, like inside of our manufacturing, we have probably some of the most sophisticated, machines to be able to manufacture, but we're always going to need manufacturing technicians. Right. In terms of AI impacting the way work is, I see it as an augmentation to work, not a replacement. So work's going to end up being impacted by being able to shorten cycles and be able to sort of help, even like we were just having a conversation with our executives around, a lot of AI has been focused on software, but how can we help our design engineers use AI in the design space, right? So that they can design faster and have sort of their ways in which their cycle time of innovation be sped up. And so I think all of us are trying to, I own all of organization and talent. So in the learning space, we're looking at all sorts of AI tools to shorten how to do learning content, digital content, right? It's going to impact every single capability across all of our different groups and teams. But I don't see it as AI is going to come in and overtake. It's just really more of how do you drive more speed, right? And more innovation and faster cycles of learning time, and allow you to spend more time asking better questions, right? And be able to solve more complex problems.
Increasing productivity.
Yeah. Well, and I think also to your point, I think as a way to improve quality as well, right? So if you think about examples of where AI can be used, say even on the factory floor, right, as almost a coach, where it gets smarter about workers who are more productive on particular parts of the process and can start actually sending those types of, can orient towards those with better skills in that area or higher production in that area, more product to produce, et cetera. So I think in that sense can make real-time improvements just even on the factory floor around that. Yeah. So you have places where that's really changing the nature of the work itself and the way the work gets done.
Yeah, I mean, I think AI is going to give us better insights. Right. Like we have our homegrown AI, which we call a gap solver, and it drives work sites on workforce analysis. Right. Way better capabilities than we've ever had before. Scrubbing data from what are the skills outside, what are skills in the university, what do we have in house, and how do we end up closing on the gaps for the long range plan.
Yeah. So I don't think there's too much to fear.
No.
It'll be helpful. I'd like to open it up. We only have a couple of minutes left, but any questions from the audience before we wrap up? Okay. Well, Karen, I'll let you close. Any other food for thought, or essentially tips for the audience as you think about, closing the talent gap?
I would probably offer, and I think this is particularly true and I'll harken back to something I said about just the under-enrollment in some of the programs that are out there, to the degree that, and so this is maybe personal advice for those of you with college-age students who are thinking about changes yourself. I think this is an industry that is undersubscribed in terms of the amount of growth potential that we all know will be there. And so if we're looking at ways to promote careers for the future, ensure that people have a long place to really invest their time and energy. I know we encourage our own employees in Deloitte around this, and I would do the same. I think very, very optimistic for the future of this.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree. There seems to be a little bit of news that there's a glut, semiconductor glut, but with data. Everything is all about data, and semiconductors actually process all the data. And so AI is going to create a significant demand for semiconductors, electric vehicles. You think about everything that you use on a daily basis, there's a chip in it, and that's just going to continue to expand. So I agree. It's definitely an industry that our young people can get into and really have a long, vibrant, and successful career in. So, a lot of encouragement out there for our younger students and kids. So, thank you very much. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Stephanie. This is an important topic that we talk about at Deloitte as well. And so, welcome any feedback and thoughts. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, thanks.
All right.
All right.